Hi everyone, welcome back to the Stitches and Scribbles channel. My name is Erin and I have lots of books to talk about with you today. As you can see, I have some stacks behind me. So today I figured I would talk about all the books that I read in December, as well as books I got for Christmas and books that I acquired somehow during the month of December. So let's start off with the books that I read in December. Now there's one on this list that I accidentally talked about in my last podcast episode, and that was Abraham Lincoln Vampire Hunter. So if you want to hear my review on that one, you can go to the previous podcast to hear my thoughts on that. I did finish it December 4th, but I accidentally read it in my list in the previous month. So you can go back to check that one out. The second book I read, I don't currently have with me because I read it from my school library because it is in fact a middle grade book, but it was Mercy Suarez Changes Gears by Meg Medina. I was unsure of how to say the character's first name because it's spelled like the word merci in French, which means thank you. But as far as I can tell, based on how other characters were interacting with her and some of the way the dialogue was worded, I believe her first name is pronounced Mercy. If you happen to know that that's incorrect, please correct me in the comments. I was just going off of what I could tell from the context of the story. This was a really great middle grade novel. I gave it 5 stars. It had a lot of things in it that I really look for. It had very diverse characters, which is always important to include. I also liked that it showed a friendship between a boy and a girl without it going into the crush territory. The two characters involved in that are made fun of for assumed crushes, but that's not part of the equation there. So I'll go ahead and read the synopsis. Mercy Suarez knew that 6th grade would be different, but she had no idea just how different. For starters, Mercy has never been like the other kids at her private school in Florida because she and her older brother Rolly are scholarship students. They don't have a big house or a fancy boat, and they have to do extra community service to make up for their free tuition. So when bossy Edna Santos sets her sights on the new boy, who happens to be Mercy's school-assigned sunshine buddy, Mercy becomes the target of Edna's jealousy. Things aren't going well at home either. Mercy's grandfather and most trusted ally, Lolo, has been acting strangely lately. Forgetting important things, falling from his bike, and getting angry over nothing. No one in her family will tell Mercy what's going on, so she's left to her own worries, while also feeling all on her own at school. In a coming-of-age tale full of humor and wisdom, award-winning author Meg Medina gets to the heart of the confusion and constant changes that defines middle school and the steadfast connection that defines family. So just as, not so much a warning, just adding information to that synopsis, especially if you're considering having kids in your life read it. When it mentions that her grandfather is having some issues, he does end up being diagnosed with Alzheimer's as part of the book storyline, but the book did a really good job of showing the progression in a way that was really easy for kids to understand, as well as Mercy dealing with her own feelings on the subject, which I think was really important representation in that book. So 5 stars. I believe there are other books in the series as well, so I would love to check those out. The next one I read, I also don't have with me because I read it as an ebook, and it's also a middle grade book. And this one actually does not have a blurb on Storygraph, but it's called The Explorer by Catherine Rundell. And I remember hearing about these books. I forget if it was in a podcast or from someone I was talking to in person, but I ended up looking for a lot of this author's books, and she has a pretty wide variety of middle grade fiction, some nonfiction books, and the content of her books is pretty varied. But this story was about a group of kids who end up stranded in the Amazon rainforest due to a plane crash. So it had very similar vibes to the book Hatchet, except that instead of a solo character, it's a group of kids. And it's called The Explorer because they end up interacting with a man who's been in the Amazon woods for in the Amazon rainforest for quite some time, just kind of living on his own by choice, who also ended up there because of a plane crash. So very interesting book. A lot of survival things. It is a little dark at times, similar to Hatchet, just because of the content area. But I would say if you have students who liked Hatchet and are looking for more like that, this is a really great book. It also has quite a few different cover variations. So the copy I read did not look like this, but it is a really fantastic middle grade book. I gave that one 4 stars. So not quite as high as Mercy Suarez, but pretty up there. The next one I read as an ebook, so I don't have the physical copy. And this was one of my books for adoration for the month. So if you don't know, I'm a practicing Catholic, and I recently started going to adoration once a week with my mom. And the way that I focus best during adoration and keeping my mind on something related to my Catholic faith is by reading. So I try to have a book going during adoration, either on my phone or a book that I can physically bring with me to keep my mind kind of centered during that time. So the one I chose to read for this month was Find Peace in Advent, 4 Weeks to Worrying Less at Christmas by Gary Zemek. And this one was really not meant to be read in like a couple sittings. It's meant to be read every day, going with the daily readings that you would hear during daily mass or during Sunday masses. So it didn't work quite as well for what I was intending it for, but I did still enjoy reading all of the reflections and everything. I gave it 4 stars. I also found that if I were to do this again, I'd prefer a physical copy of the book, just because the way the readings work, you have to like flip back and forth between sections in order to like be on the correct page for the correct day, because the days of Advent numerically don't line up with the days of the week the same way every year. And that was a little cumbersome. That would have been cumbersome to do with an ebook. So if you are interested, I would recommend getting a physical copy of the book. This one was 161 pages, and I gave it 4 stars. The next book I read was a physical book. It was The Kingdom of Sweets by Erica Johansson. This was one that I had in my stash that I picked up from a little library several months ago. As I've said before, someone in my neighborhood pays for Book of the Month and I think gets rid of them every single time. But I've been holding on to this one specifically to read during December because it's a retelling of the Nutcracker. I'll go ahead and read the synopsis. Light and dark, this is the cursed birthright placed upon Clara and Natasha by their godfather, Drosselmeyer, whose power and greed hold an entire city in his sway. Charming Clara, the favorite, grows into a life of beauty and ease, while Natasha is relegated to her sister's shadow, ignored and unloved. But Natasha seizes the opportunity for revenge one Christmas Eve, when Drosselmeyer arrives at the family gala with the Nutcracker, an enchanted gift that offers entry into an alternate world, the Kingdom of Sweets. Following Clara into the glittering land of snow and sugar, Natasha discovers a source of power far greater than Drosselmeyer, the Sugar Plum Fairy, who offers her own wondrous gifts and chilling bargains. But as Natasha uncovers the truth about a dark destiny crafted long before her birth, she must reckon with forces both earthly and magical, human and diabolical, and decide to which world she truly belongs. I had mixed feelings about this book. The writing is fantastic. I was very pulled into the story. Really liked all the nods to the original Nutcracker. And I knew that this was labeled as dark, and as on some sites it was labeled as a horror book. I would say that that is very accurate, and it was much darker than I thought it was going to be, including just some of the decisions that the characters make in their personal lives. It's definitely a case of an imperfect narrator. Natasha and Clara both make some decisions early on in the book that I would not be comfortable sharing with younger readers, even though in some places this was labeled as a YA book. I would say it's heavily adult. It was well written. It was good. It's not one that I feel like I need to hang on to, despite the fact that I do love Christmas themed books, especially kind of darker Christmas themed books, like A Christmas Carol comes to mind, which is dark just because of the ghosts, not because of anything else specific. But I would read this with caution. Also, it it does make the Nutcracker feel a lot scarier than it really was. So read with caution. I gave it 4 stars. I think if I were to think back on it, 3 to 3.5 is probably more accurate, but I'm not going to go and change the rating now. The next one I also read a physical copy. This was If You Can Get It by Brendan Hodge. This was one that I was lucky enough to get from my school's book fair. The book fair company that we went through actually sent adult books as well as children's books, because they set up their book fairs so that you can open them up to the parish if you so desire. So this is one of the books that I purchased there. The back says, Jen Nelson has an MBA, a nice condo, and a fast-track job at a tech startup in Silicon Valley. If her big product launch goes well next month, she may finally land the marketing director job she's been gunning for. But then her younger sister Katie, just out of college and estranged from their newly devout parents, blows through the front door, dumping cardboard boxes and a lifetime of personal drama onto Jen's just swept floor. Family is family, and Jen lets her sister, the embodiment of all that annoys her, move in. Maybe she'll turn aimless Katie into a model adult. But when Jen's own well-laid career plans hurtle off the tracks, a corporate buyout, a layoff, and a disastrous business trip to China, she turns more and more to Katie for support and begins to reassess the place of family and love in her life. I really enjoyed this book. I gave it 5 stars. If I had known that so much of the book was going to go into the details of international production and like business things, I probably wouldn't have picked it up, but I was fascinated by everything that was discussed by the main character. I was also pleasantly surprised that the male author was so good at writing a female narrator in a way that felt realistic and relatable without going over the top. Some of the really kind of drawing moments in this book were the main character Jen talking about her business trip and some of the social aspects that she was not pleased with when she was dealing with this bigger production company and the stresses that go with it, and also some of the gender-related difficulties that go along with that. I won't spoil too much of that because it is really important to the book, but how that kind of drives her decisions moving forwards. I would say it's pretty evenly split between the kind of business aspect of Jen's life and her life with Katie once Katie moves in. I also am really hoping that there's eventually going to be a sequel to this book, but it doesn't look like there's one currently in plans. It does leave with a slightly dissatisfactory ending, especially if you are practicing Catholic like me. It seems like there was an open door for Jen to kind of take the next step in her religious journey that wasn't resolved by the end of the book. I don't think that knowing that part really ruins anything for you. There's still like a big reveal at the end, as well as some big reveals for Katie. But I would have wanted to know that going into the book, that you're left wanting more with this story. So hopefully the author will consider writing a sequel, because I would really love to know what happens to Jen next. She felt like a very relatable character. She was pretty close in age to me. Despite a lot of other differences, it was just really nice to kind of feel like I was reading about someone who could be a friend. And I find that that's kind of rare in literature now. I am more drawn to books where the character is younger than me or much older than me. So having a 30-something character who felt very real was really refreshing. The next book I read, I also no longer have with me because I returned it to my parish library. But I read the book Pray With Me by Grace Maza Urbanski. And this was also one of my adoration books. And this is a book all about praying with children. So the author, who I happen to know in real life, which was very exciting to find the book on the shelf and realize that I knew who she was. The author really goes into detail about ways to encourage children to pray, especially through imaginative prayer. And even though it's written through the lens of a parent reading it to work with their child, I found it really helpful as an educator. This one also doesn't have a blurb. It was a really short book, only 160 pages. I gave it 5 stars. I would say if you have children in your life and you're looking into how to be more prayerful with them, this was a really excellent resource. So highly recommend that one. The next book I read was an audiobook. I got this one through Audible, and it was called Christmas at Glitter Peak Lodge by Kirsty Herlin Johnson. I know for a fact I am pronouncing her first name incorrectly because I heard it on the audiobook, but I don't remember exactly how it was supposed to be pronounced. The author is Norwegian. This is a translated book, and the intent of the book is that you can read one chapter of it every day during Advent, because that's the progression of the story in the book. I had really high hopes for this book. I ended up giving it 3 stars because I did still finish it and I didn't hate it, but it felt very underwhelming to me. But I'll go ahead and read the synopsis. I don't know why I couldn't remember that word. After a traumatic climbing accident, well-known alpinist Ingrid Berg has returned to the quaint Norwegian village that her family has called home for generations. She is now ready to put away her ice axe and take over the management of the Glitter Peak Lodge from her aging grandmother, who's no longer up to the task. With Christmas rapidly approaching, guests are expected from both Norway and abroad, and Ingrid is welcomed as the inn's savior. But within short order of Ingrid's return, complications arise. Leaking pipes, last-minute cancellations, the resurfacing of a long-buried mystery, and the return of 2 men from Ingrid's past. Will Ingrid be able to keep the inn alive, or will her family's legacy be lost forever? The ultimate feel-good holiday treat, Christmas at Glitter Peak Lodge explores the healing power of family and home and the magical bonds of a community and traditions. Set up like an advent calendar with 24 chapters, each set on a different day in December leading up to Christmas, it can be enjoyed in one chapter a day, or devoured in one sitting. This was labeled as fiction, mystery, and romance by the genre labels. I think I was a little too hopeful that it would be a good mystery. And it did have some mystery elements, but I would say it leans more heavily on the romance or generic fiction side. I was not as engaged with it as I would have liked to have been. It felt way longer than it needed to be, for lack of better words. But I kind of just found it underwhelming. The wrap up to the mystery felt kind of predictable to me. But I also know that a lot of Christmas books or holiday romance books are designed to be easy reads, at least here in the States. There's a lot of like cheesy romances for the holidays and stuff like that. So I don't know if this was meant to feel in the same category because it is a Norwegian author. But if you're looking for like a good like edge of your seat mystery, this is not it. Despite the fact that it talks about like climbing mountains and stuff like that. There's no actual mountain climbing during the course of the story. I also thought that there were some really traumatic life events that happened for some of the characters that were kind of just thrown in. I have to pause for a second. My battery is about to run out. Okay, we'll see if this works now. I think my camera's charging. The only thing I don't like about this new camera that I got is there's no external battery. You can only charge it by plugging it in. And I think I was having an issue where my charger was not connected correctly or something. So it didn't charge overnight. And for a while it looked like it wasn't charging when it was on, which was weird. But I think I have it fixed now. I had to like reset my power strip and all that stuff. But anyway, going back to Christmas at Glitter Peak Lodge, there were some very traumatic background stories kind of thrown in there that I felt like either needed more attention to like fully address the issue, or they needed to not be kind of a like gotcha surprise thrown in there. So again, check for warnings on this book if you feel like you need them, but it both wasn't quite the like cozy romance that you wanted it to be, and it also wasn't the like thriller mystery that you wanted it to be. So whatever. I gave it 3 stars. Not knocking that other people might like it more than I do. The next book I read is one that I reread every year. I reread A Christmas Carol by Charles Dickens every year. The last couple years I've been doing the audiobook version that is read by Hugh Grant. It's available through Audible. I love this version. I think Hugh Grant does a great job. I did try a Tim Curry version a year or two ago, and he was just too over the top and silly for me to enjoy it. So the Hugh Grant version is much better if you're a big audiobook person. This book speaks for itself. It's one of my favorites for a reason. I think the messages in it are really valuable. I read it as a read aloud last year with 5th graders. I wasn't able to do it as a read aloud this year because of my current position. Just with being the librarian, you only get so much time with the kids every month. So I knew that doing a full read aloud of this book just wasn't in the cards for us. But I'd love to try to find a way to work it in the future, or like award a prize if kids read it or something like that. Up next, I read The Fury, and I have heard this author's name pronounced before as Alex Michaelides. That totally doesn't look right based on how it's spelled, which I know is not always an indication. But again, I'd appreciate the correct pronunciation of this author's name if anybody happens to know it and is able to type it out somehow. It looks like Michaelides, which I know is not right because he is originally from Cyprus. So the E's sound at the end, instead of having that be silent, seems correct. But Michaelides also, or Michaelides maybe? I don't know. Please tell me if you know the answer to that. This one I picked up from a little library not too long ago. Although clearly someone got it at like a secondhand bookstore type of deal. I picked this one because it said it was a murder mystery. It says, "This is a tale of murder. Or maybe that's not quite true. At its heart, it's a love story, isn't it? Lana Farrer is a reclusive ex-movie star and one of the most famous women in the world. Every year, she invites her closest friends to escape the English weather and spend Easter on her idyllic private Greek island. I tell you this because you may think you know this story. You probably read about it at the time. It caused a real stir in the tabloids, if you remember. It had all the necessary ingredients for a press sensation, a celebrity, a private island cut off by wind, and a murder. We found ourselves trapped there overnight. Our old friendships concealed hatred and a desire for revenge. What followed was a game of cat and mouse, a battle of wits full of twists and turns, building to an unforgettable climax. The night ended in violence and death. But who am I? My name is Elliot Chase, and I'm going to tell you a story unlike you've ever heard." I gave this book 3 stars, just because I think it's the unreliable narrator again. I've talked about this in some of my other podcast episodes, that I've realized that is maybe a trope that I don't really like so much. This did have some really excellent twists in the story that I did not see coming. Some of those I think were really good. Some of them I think kind of came out of nowhere for a reason and they made sense to the story, but I felt like it could have been a million other things that would have also made sense. I didn't hate this book though. Actually, the more I think about it and how much the story kind of stuck with me afterwards, I think 3 was maybe a little bit of a low rating. This maybe deserved a 3.5 or a 4. But at the end of the day, it's rich people murdering each other, which sometimes I like that genre and sometimes it really falls flat for me. I think this is one of the ones where it fell a little bit flat, but I did appreciate the storytelling aspect and the twist ending. So definitely worth a read. I have been told by a friend who reads kind of similar books to what I read that I should read The Silent Patient by the same author, and I might like that one better, but unclear. I do happen to have The Silent Patient upstairs because I got it from a little library, I think. I know I didn't purchase it, but that's on my to-read list. The next one I read was An Unwanted Guest by Sherry LaPena. And again, not sure if I'm saying this name correctly. I'm pretty sure I got Sherry right, but last name, please correct me if I'm saying it wrong. This one also came from either a little library or like a clearance sale. I don't really remember because I've had it on my to be read shelf for maybe over a year now, definitely a couple months. But I saved it because it takes place during a blizzard. So I was waiting for at least December before I read it, just to kind of get in the zone for this one. This says, a weekend retreat at a cozy mountain lodge is supposed to be the perfect getaway, but when the storm hits, no one is getting away. It's winter in the Catskills, and Mitchell's Inn, nestled deep in the woods, is the perfect setting for a relaxing, maybe even romantic weekend away. It boasts spacious old rooms with huge wood-burning fireplaces, a well-stocked wine cellar, and opportunities for cross-country skiing, snowshoeing, or just curling up with a good murder mystery. So when the weather takes a turn for the worse, and a blizzard cuts off the electricity and all contact with the outside world, the guests settle in and try to make the best of it. Soon, though, one of the guests turns up dead. It looks like an accident, but when a second guest dies, they start to panic. Within the Snowden paradise, something or someone is picking off the guests one by one, and there's nothing they can do but hunker down and hope they can survive the storm and one another. I loved this book. I gave it 5 stars. I almost read it in one sitting. I probably would have read it in one sitting if I hadn't started it so late at night the first night that I read it. And well, not late, but like late for me. Absolutely loved this book. I've read something else by Sherry LaPena. I can't remember what other book by her I've read, but I know I really enjoyed that one as well. This was the perfect, not too long, twisty murder mystery, very reminiscent of like an Agatha Christie type, like closed room mystery because nobody can get out of the hotel or the inn. Yeah, the inn during this time. I was satisfied because I guessed who the murderer was maybe 2/3 into the book. And then there was still a twist that I didn't see coming. So really enjoyed this one. Very good, quick murder mystery, and still felt slightly holiday appropriate, although it's not a Christmas centered one, it's just winter, but very, very good. Highly recommend that book if you happen to get your hands on it. The next one I read, and the last one for 2024 as of right now, I'm filming this on December 30th because it was the best time for me to film this week. I'm hoping I can sneak one more book in before the end of 2024. But I've got 2 days to do it. So we'll see. The next and possibly last book for the year is One Perfect Couple by Ruth Ware. I also gave this one 5 stars. And this, I've mentioned it before, I kind of like the island getaway murder mysteries because it feels like the last place that a murder should be taking place is on some sort of romantic getaway, or I've read a couple that are reality show based, which this one is. I really liked this one. I liked it so much better than The Woman in Cabin 10, which I think I maybe only gave 3 stars, but I really liked this one. This is also one where I wasn't quite sure how to pronounce the main character's name because of how her nickname is said by other people in the story. Her name is spelled Lyla, which I would have thought would be Lila, but her boyfriend calls her Lil as a nickname, so it might be Leela, but I'm going to say it as Lila just because otherwise I will mess up. So, if it's supposed to be a different pronunciation, again, I'm open to criticism. Lila is in a bit of a rut. Her postdoctoral research has fizzled out. She's pretty sure they won't extend her contract, and things with her boyfriend Nico, an aspiring actor, aren't going great. When the opportunity arises for Nico to join the cast of a new reality TV show, One Perfect Couple, she decides to try out with him. A whirlwind audition process later, Lila finds herself whisked off to a tropical paradise with Nico, boating through the Indian Ocean toward Ever After Island, where the two of them will compete against 4 other couples, Bayer and Angel, Dan and Santana, Joel and Romy, and Connor and Zana, in order to win a cash prize. But not long after they arrive on the deserted island, things start to go wrong. After the first challenge leaves everyone rattled and angry, An overnight storm takes matters from bad to worse. Cut off from the mainland by miles of ocean, deprived of their phones, and unable to contact the crew that brought them there, the group must band together for survival. As tensions run high and freshwater runs low, Lila finds that this TV show is all too real, and the stakes are life or death. A fast-paced, spellbinding thriller rife with intrigue and characters that feel so true to life, this novel proves once again that Ruth Ware is the queen of psychological suspense. Everything that they said in that synopsis is true. This was such an intense read. This one I did finish. No, I didn't do this one in one sitting either. I think I read the first couple chapters one day and then finished it the next day. But it was crazy how much stuff happened in this book. It's a little bit longer than An Unwanted Guest, so it definitely took me a little bit longer to get through. This one's 383 pages, versus the last one was 290. This was, like, part survival challenge, like, almost going back to Hatchet-related books, kind of Hatchet, but also, like, And Then There Were None by Agatha Christie, like, that combination of vibes, plus Bachelor type TV show. Really, really good. I would definitely recommend this to someone who's in a reading rut. Same thing with An Unwanted Guest. It will get you out of it. I also liked that there's a point in the book where the author's clearly making fun of herself because one of the characters grabs a copy of The Woman in Cabin 10, I believe, to start a fire. Which I thought was really funny, because I had a moment of, oh, I read that book, and then I went, wait, she wrote that book. So, author clearly knows how to make fun of herself, which I thought was very funny. Those are all the books I read in December of 2024. Like I said, I'm hoping to sneak in one more, but the reason for that is kind of silly. I realized this year that, well, in the last couple days, I had realized that the number of romance books I had read was higher than the number of mysteries and thrillers, which is usually one of my higher genres after, like, fantasy and sci-fi. And I didn't like that. So I've been, if you can see the pattern for the last couple books I read, that they're all labeled as both mystery and thriller, that is because I'm trying to flip that before the year ends. Right now, romance, mystery, and thriller are all tied at, like, 13 books, I think. So I have to read one more to tip the scales. The way Storygraph works is it counts towards the total for that genre, even if a book has multiple labels, which is why, since a lot of thrillers are also labeled as mystery, I've just been reading thrillers in order to try to balance that out and get both of them a little bit higher. So hopefully I can sneak in one more. It might end up being The Silent Patient, just to, like, kind of close out reading that author. But I know I have 2 Mary Kubica books. I think I have, I can't even remember what it's called. I can picture the cover. It has trees on it and the letters are neon pink. Local Woman Missing. I think it's that one. And I have another one by her in my stack as well. So hopefully I'll get to one of those. I'm also thinking that this podcast is going to be really, really long, because I think I was talking for like 20 minutes during the first clip, and I can see this one's now at like 15 minutes. So I think we're going to go through the books I got for Christmas, and then maybe save my other acquisitions for next time, because it's going to take forever to get through that stack. So I will just talk about the ones I got for Christmas instead. So I had 2 sources of books for Christmas. One of them was we did a Secret Santa through work, and my Secret Santa got me a Barnes & Noble gift card. Obviously, I'm the librarian, which I was really excited about, but I intentionally waited until after Christmas to use it because I knew I had put books on my wish list for that goes to my in-laws. So I wanted to see what they would get me first, and I'm glad I waited because they definitely bought me stuff that I would have used the gift card on. So, if you've been watching my podcasts, you already know that I read this book as an ebook not too long ago. This is My Lady Jane by Cynthia Hand, Brody Ashton, and Jody Meadows. It is a fantasy historical fiction about Lady Jane Grey, and the synopses for these books are really, really short, so I'll just go ahead and read them. This one was, Lady Jane Grey, 16, is about to be married to a total stranger and caught up in an insidious plot to rob her cousin, King Edward, of his throne. But that's the least of Jane's problems. She's about to become Queen of England. Like that could go wrong. These books all take place in a fantasy world where some people have the ability to transform into animals. So the whole kind of point of this book is that Jane wants peace between people who can't transform, which are called Verities, and people who can transform, which are called Ethians, in order to have peace in England. And part of the appeal of these books was the really sarcastic narration style. I absolutely loved it. This was turned into a TV show for Amazon, although I heard it did not get renewed. So it will only get one season. And the first season covers about the first half of the book. So it would have only gotten 2 anyway. But I highly recommend this. The TV show is definitely an adult show. The books, I believe, are labeled as YA. This one was definitely clean. So nothing to worry about here. But I really enjoyed this one. I had so much fun reading it, and I usually really don't like historical fiction, but I loved this. So my in-laws got me this one for Christmas, as well as 2 other ones in the series. And I'm now trying to look and remember which ones they got me versus which ones I bought with the gift card. So they also got me My Plain Jane, which is about Jane Eyre. The back says, you may think you know the story. After a miserable childhood, penniless orphan Jane Eyre becomes governess at Thornfield Hall. There she meets one dark, brooding Mr. Rochester. Despite their significant age gap and his uneven temper, they fall in love, and reader, she marries him. We have a different story to tell. So this one, and as with all the books, from what I have read online, takes place in the same universe where some people can transform into animals. So I'm curious to see how that will play into the story. I also still have not read Jane Eyre beginning to end. I really struggled with it. Last time I attempted it, I tried reading the hard copy version. I tried listening to the audiobook. I kept falling asleep during the audiobook. I tried to find a movie version of it and couldn't find a free one on any streaming service, so I kind of just put it on hold. I'm hoping that maybe I can read this and then read the actual Jane Eyre, and it'll help me kind of fill in the gaps, even though I know that the story is going to be very different as the My Lady Jane one was, but excited to read it nonetheless. So in case you couldn't tell, the way this series works is each book is a different character, despite the fact that there's the Lady Janie's series where they're all named Jane, and the Mary series where all the characters are named Mary, but they are all standalone books other than having this shared universe that they're set in. The last one that my in-laws got for me was My Salty Mary, which is probably the one I'm most excited to read in this series because it's about Mary Read, who's a pirate. This one has a little bit more of a synopsis because it's a hardcover, so I'll read the longer one. Mary isn't just a little mermaid. True, she got legs so she could run after the not-so-charming prince, but after he walks out on her, she swears off love. She'd rather conquer the 7 seas as a pirate, even if it means she has to pose as a boy. Jack is Mary's cousin and childhood BFF. When he learns he's half human, he goes above to find his long-lost father. Instead, he loses his heart to the vivacious wannabe pirate Anne Bonny, and he'd give anything to be part of her world. Tobias is the son of the infamous pirate King Blackbeard, so everyone expects him to step into his father's boots and beard, but he'd rather just be part of the crew, Mary's crew. He knows she's a girl, and he's falling for her hard, but he also senses there's something fishy about her past that she's not telling him. A deadly contest. When Blackbeard dies suddenly, a contest is set to see who will be crowned next. Mary is determined to win and become pirate king, or queen. She may not be the best man for the job, but she'll definitely prove she's worth her salt. So this is the only one that doesn't mention Ethians and Verities, and instead says things about mermaids. So I'm curious if this one maybe is slightly different. from the others, or maybe the Mary series is different than the Jane series. I don't know, but I'm excited to find out. But then, as previously said, those are the ones that my in-laws got me. I then used my gift card to purchase the rest of the series, because I have zero chill, apparently, when it comes to these books. So, the last in the Lady Janies is My Calamity Jane. It says, welcome to the Wild West, where Calamity Jane, Frank the Pistol Prince Butler, and Annie Oakley herself are out to cure the American frontier of a situation so hairy it's downright wolfy. Which kind of sounds like werewolves to me. Maybe they... Huh. Okay, so maybe these aren't a shared universe. I'm just doing book math over here. Huh. I don't know now. I was pretty sure that I knew that they were all in the same universe, but now I'm kind of questioning that. Because this one also doesn't mention anything about Ethians and people turning into animals. It says she sees dead people on the front. So maybe it's just ghosts. And maybe this one's just werewolves. Or maybe just one of the characters in this book is an Ethian who can turn into a wolf. I don't know. We'll see. Still excited. On to other Mary books. The first in the Mary series, which is why I thought... Nope, not that one. This one. Which is why I thought all of these were connected. See, this one has to be connected. So this one is about Mary, Queen of Scots, who is a character in My Lady Jane, and a contemporary historically as well. And in the My Lady Jane, they specifically mention that Mary, Queen of Scots is an Ethian. So those two must be connected. And this one says something about her Ethian form on the front. But this one says, the classy, courtly, and courageous tale of the one and only Mary, Queen of Scots, as she navigates the glittering court of the Renaissance France, a place of poison and plots, of beauties and beasts, of mice and queens. So this one has to take place, or like has to have the same animal thing as My Lady Jane. But I'm now very much questioning if the rest of them do. So this is the first one in the Lady Mary series. This is the second one in the Mary series, and it's based off of Mary Shelley, the author of Frankenstein. It's alive in this all-true monstrous tale of the geniuses Mary Shelley and Ada Lovelace as they dream bigger lives for themselves and a robot, ? Maybe Ethians are only... Okay. I thought I knew that all of these took place in the same Ethian and Verity's universe, but I'm thinking that that's very much not correct. Because we got mermaids, we got implications of werewolves, seeing ghosts, robots. So I think maybe it's only My Lady Jane and My Contrary Mary that are in the Verities and Ethians universe. But I'm so excited to read these. Regardless, I'm just very thrown off by realizing that they're maybe not all in the same universe like I thought they were. But they are all standalone books. I do know that for sure. So I will be reading those over the next couple of months. And then probably balancing them out with a bunch of thrillers and mysteries again. Because they're all labeled as romance, I think. At least some of them are. But yeah, those are the books I got for Christmas. Since we're now at probably over 40 minutes for this podcast episode, I'm going to save my other acquisitions for the next episode, as well as sharing with you what my reading goals are for 2025. So you can look forward to that in our February episode about books. I do 2 podcast episodes a month. One of them is book related. One of them is crafting related. So they alternate. So in the next book podcast episode, we'll talk about reading goals and the lovely stack of books behind me. Thank you so much for watching today. I hope you heard some books that you're interested in reading or can share my excitement over trying some new things. If you liked what you saw today, make sure you hit subscribe down below so you can be notified of all of my book-related and craft-related content here on this YouTube channel. And if you have a favorite book that you read during 2024, I'd love to hear what it was, and please leave it down in the comments below. Thanks again for watching, and I'll see you in the next one. Bye, everyone.